Good evening, everyone. It's great to see everyone back here again for another wonderful evening of Japanese studies. Today, I'm joined here with a very special guest, the Miss Satsuma Beemo. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Beemo.
Hello everyone. 皆さん、こんばんは。皆さんは元気ですか?
I think everyone's doing well today. So, I'll make sure if Beemo's a little too low, please make sure to let me know. I just raised her up a little bit, but if I need to raise her up higher, just make sure I know. And just let me know in the chat. So today is going to be a little different. I'm still going to do the typical lesson. Good evening, Kaji and Strawmelly. Today we're going to do like a lesson like I normally do. Today is going to be on short form Japanese. And Bimo here has taught Japanese for, I believe it was 7 years, is that correct?
Well, I lived in Japan
Oh,
for 7 years.
Oh, that's what it was. You lived in Japan.
I taught English in Japan.
You taught English. There it is. So,
I also speak Japanese pretty well.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Lived in Japan for 7 years and taught in Japan for 7 years. Still a little bit low? Alright. But she is familiar with the language. Quite familiar. Definitely more so than I am. So what I'm going to be doing... Konbanwa, Yusha-kun. What we're going to be doing today is I'm going to teach the lesson that I usually do, and I'll make sure to refer back to her to make sure that what I'm saying isn't just like textbook words, but actually, things that people actually say, things that like grammatically make sense, like in conversational Japanese. And then after we get through the main parts of the lesson, she and I are going to do some practice conversations. You'll get to see me struggle with basic conversational Japanese. I've done a lot of studying with grammar and whatnot, and like a lot of like kanji practice, but when it comes to actually speaking, it's definitely probably my weakest aspect with the language. So, without further ado, let's get started with the lesson. Photoshop's being a little weird. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about short form Japanese. Gonbanwa, Gonbanwa, TSC bad guy. So, to get started with short form, I'm first going to talk about what short form means. So if you think about it, like if you think about English, there's proper English and then there's sort of like the slang English or like the shorthand that we speak. Like if you say something along the lines of, I'm going to the store right now, or I'm going to the store, you could say that, or, the less formal way to say it would be like, I'm gonna go to the store. Gonna isn't necessarily a real word in proper English, but it's faster for us to say. And I'd imagine that short form is sort of in that same vein, that we say short form in like casual conversation because it's faster than the more long form or the proper form of Japanese. Would I be correct there?
Yes, one thing to note is that because Japanese is so honorific of like respecting your elders and things like that, short form exists to talk to casual acquaintances, whereas like you wouldn't talk to your boss using short form. You wouldn't, even if you knew him well, because of the sort of social structure of Japan. Short form, that basically you have the three forms of Japanese. You have the desmas form, which is the most common one for people you don't know, or for sort of regular people. You have hyper. You have keigo, which is the super formal language.
Yeah, the super formal.
Talk to your customer with that to show that you're humble to your customer. And then you have short form, which is you talk to your family and your friends.
Your family and friends, and like superiors can talk to like their juniors or to their subordinates. They could use short form, right? I think I read that.
Right. I mean, that's definitely part of it. There's actually two forms of keigo, one for talking up to someone who's above you and one for talking down to someone.
Okay, that's interesting to note. What's up?
But I'd say like a teacher would use short form to talk to their students, but the students would talk back in desmas form.
Yes, and then like, what about like? Because I was reading this in the book, and it did mention that like seniors, like an older student talking to a younger student, like a senior talking to a junior, like the senior could use short form to the junior, but it would be expected for the junior to talk back in the more formal form, right?
That's right. Beemo-san no koe wa chotto chisai yo.
Okay, let me increase the volume there a little bit. Let me adjust the volume of my music, and then let me boost the headphones. Is that better? Say some things, Beemo?
Hello. I'm saying things right now.
Yeah, it definitely hit into the yellow, so I think that's better. It almost hit into the red, so I think that voice should be picking up a little better. Yeah. Good to hear, good to hear. Thank you, Yusha. So, like I said, and I should write this out too, just to have this on the slide. So, previous forms of Japanese have been discussed with what we call long form. And so, much like English, there exists a way of speaking. There exists a more informal way of speaking. Short form. So what I'm going to talk about in regards to short form is that there's rules for this as well. I mean, like, you think about how we do that in English, how we shorten words like going to, that ing gets shortened to nna. Like, I'm going to, I'm gonna, I want to, I wanna. So, similarly, Japan has rules that are pretty consistent amongst each of the types of parts of speech that we've talked about so far. You know, nouns, e and na adjectives, verbs. They all have their forms of conjugation. And we gotta get through that boring table, you know? We gotta make our table to talk about how that conjugates both in the present tense and the past tense. Or actually, I think right now we're gonna focus on present positive and negative. So, going through this list, short form. We're gonna go through pretty much the basic examples here. So we're gonna talk about verbs. Verbs, e adjectives like kawaii, or cute. Na adjectives like genki na. And we're gonna talk about when we say noun along with this, like gakusei desu, sensei desu. So noun plus this. So the way this works, and I'm gonna write this out, I'm gonna put a divider here. Hopefully I have enough space to write this all out. We're gonna say this is positive and negative. And we're gonna say long form and short form. We're gonna have 4 columns here. This is what our lesson's gonna start with, just so we can see sort of the relationship, what like formal Japanese that long form is and how it compares to the short form. Long and short. So, the verb I'm gonna use, and I'm obviously only gonna use a single example for each of these just for the sake of time. So, for example, when we talk about verbs, performing a verb, like, for example, reading, right? I'm reading the book. We say, yomimasu. So if I say a sentence along the lines of, hon o yomimasu, I'm reading the book, you know? But if we shorten that, it would be much shorter. On, o, and then this is going to be, instead of yomimasu, it's going to be yomu. On o yomu. It's 3 syllables. It's 2 syllables shorter, so does deserve the name of short form. We take off these 2 syllables at the end, and the sound of the mi turns back to mu, because this is something that we talked about back during our first lesson on conjugations. That mi, when we use a positive verb, turns into yomimasu, but the original form of the word, that what we call dictionary form or the stem form, is yomu. For E adjectives, like, say, kawaii, which, as probably most of you guys know, kawaii is cute. Kawaii desu. When we say that something is cute, we would say kawaii desu, but that's long form. Essentially, the rule here, very simply put, is kawaii desu turns back into just kawaii. So essentially, and this is going to be a pretty common rule throughout a lot of these short forms, is that desu is formal. Desu is something that we say to end sentences, but that in and of itself is a very formal thing to do. Am I correct there?
That's right.
That's right. So yeah, it is part of proper writing, but I mean, the way we shorten verbs and stuff isn't formal anyway. But we say it, but that's how we talk. So we just chop off that dis. Yeah, that's why it's structured like that. It's just formality versus informality. So na. So if we say genki desu, you know, I'm energetic. I'm feeling healthy, I'm feeling good. Genki desu. Exactly. For the verb, the short form is just the root of the verb. And that E sound turns back into an U sound, or whatever. Yeah, the U sound, because that's how verbs end. Yeah. All verbs in their root form is that U sound. It's like yomu, taberu, miru. Good evening, Valraven.
Good evening.
So, genki desu. This is interesting. We don't actually drop the des for not adjectives, but rather, for not adjectives, it becomes genki. Genki da. So adding that da, still a syllable shorter. It feels like more punchy, you know? That's how I think of it. You know, genki da. It feels like sharp. You know, des sounds very like formal. It sounds very like soft. Genki da. I'm energetic. And then for noun, it's the same rule. If I say gakusei desu, like, yes, I am a student. Gakusei desu. And then you have some hot-blooded dude who doesn't really care about formalities. He goes in, you know, he's like a middle schooler. He has probably going through Chunibyo or something, and he thinks he's like a cool gang member or something. And he goes like, Gakusei da! He thinks he's like intense, hot-blooded. Gakusei da. It's short form, you know? He's saying that he's a student, probably at some like weird school. So that's how the positive works. Yomimasu, the short form of that is yomu, and that's consistent. Hot-blooded Chuni speak. That was my attempt, at least. I was there at one point in my life. So yomu, if I had like taberu, that would be or tabemasu would be taberu. What about genki desu ne? So yeah, if you say, it's actually a point that gets brought up later on. So when you use that if you end something with like ne or yo, like genki desu ne, the short form would actually just be genki da ne or genki da yo.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
So it's a lot more chipper to say da instead of dis. So that is the answer there. And even like if you think about what is it? The song from Final Fantasy X. It's called Suteki da ne, which again they're using that da for that short form, Suteki da ne, or isn't it beautiful? I think beautiful, right? I think that's the translation.
Isn't it wonderful?
Wonderful, that's what it is. Oops. I'm trying. And so for the negative, the rules are quite different. What's up?
I was going to say, before we move on,
Mm-hmm.
with short form for adjectives and for nouns, often, mostly in casual conversational Japanese, even the da is omitted.
Ah, interesting.
So someone can say, genki ka? Genki.
Oh, so even though like they've already shortened it here, even like in actual like casual conversation, the da gets dropped itself too. That's good to know.
Yeah, so the da, so that form of short form is used more in sort of more grammatical structures where you're, for example, quoting someone,
okay.
but even then, like if you've watched anime, you'll often
Of
hear
course.
people say, "Oh, Genki," or something like that.
You won't really hear the da.
Yeah.
Unless like the character's written to be like really formal. But typically no, yeah. That makes sense. Like now that I'm thinking about it that way. Continuing on here to the negatives. So if I say like I didn't read, like because I don't know how to read. I can't read. Yomimasen is the long form there. Yomi. And then ma sen. But very differently, what we do here, instead of just turning it into the root form for the negative, it's actually going to turn into yo yomanai. So what happens in this case here, when we're negating a verb, in short form, the me sound, the e sound, turns into an a sound. So like, if I'm thinking like, I'm trying to think of another verb, but for some reason all the verbs have blank from my mind right now. So like, what? Like I like wrote an example, but I wrote an exception because what it is, right? In this case here, we have yomimasen turning into yomanai. If I have a verb like the one I wrote here in my book, this is the verb to buy, which is kai or kao, would be written as kaimasen, normally as a long verb. Kaimasen. But the short verb, the short form of this turns into ka wa nai. So it's a weird example, but again, you can see that that e sound turns back into an a sound. Kawa nai. What's up?
Yeah, so that's the same for almost every verb that ends in just u. So cow.
So yeah, since cow, since this verb here to buy is the root form is cow. When we say a negative version of it, it turns into kaimasen, and anything that ends with an u sound turns into that e sound when conjugated like that. The e turns into a wa instead of just an a. It's not kamasen or kanai, but kawanai. And I assume they did that because it kind of just sounds weird to repeat the vowel sound twice. Yeah. What was that?
I said ka'anai.
Yeah, kanai. It just sounds awkward. Kanai as opposed to kawanai. So that's where that change comes into play. But typically it follows that same rule here. For pretty much every other verb, it's just yomimasen, yomanai. The e sound in that consonant turns into an a sound. For the rest of these, it's actually pretty consistent. So if I say something wasn't cute, kawaii, kunai desu, kunai. And that was something that we talked about a while back. Kunai desu is how we negate a e adjective. And simply, it just turns into kawaii, kunai. Kawaii kunai. And then the na adjectives, very similar. Genki, energetic. Genki janai, I'm not healthy, I'm not energetic. Genki janai desu is that formal version. Janai desu turns into genki janai. Again, just like in the positive, genki janai or genki desu, genki da. For this, it's just there's not even a da. It's just genki. Genki janai. Na Are you Genki? I'm not Genki. Genki janai. And same with noun plus dis. Gakusei. Gakusei janai desu is how we would say that we are not a student. And then the short form of that, again, just drops the dis. That's not correct. Wait. Genki, or what am I saying Genki? Gakusei. Gakusei janai. Janai. God. And like I said, and like Beemo mentioned earlier, the short form is used for casual conversations. That's like, I feel like that is like the first thing that I think about when I think of short form, but it's not the only case there. And good evening, Yaru. But I feel like a student would do that to me in my own real classroom, and unless I hit them with it first. Konbanwa, buds. I hope you're doing well too. We can also use a short form. Can also be used for following situations. Beemo mentioned this one earlier. Quoting people. Quoting people. Giving negative requests. We talked about how to ask for requests before. We talked about using that te form to request something of someone. Like, you know, if you're asking someone to wait, you say, matte kudasai. But we can't request the same way for negative requests when we don't want someone to do something. For those kinds of requests, we have to use a short form here. We have to use this, what we have over here. So, negative requests. Requests. And then, expressing ideas like expressing ideas like I like doing, or I'm good at. These kinds of ideas. Like when you turn an action into a noun, that's where we can use that short form as well. So it's not only just for casual conversation, but there are also specific, like, formal instances where these short forms also get put to use.
Yeah, so, I mean, imagine what Japanese would be like if you have a long sentence where you use various verbs and you have to use mass form for every single one.
Yeah. It would be really long. I mean, it would be like, if you think about it in English, like, if everyone spoke in really proper formal English for everything, it would just get really long-winded. Like, if you never spoke in contractions or anything. Which I'm fully aware that people like that exist that just don't speak in any contractions. So, this one, there's not going to be too much grammar here. This is going to be more of a notes in terms of when to use this. We touched upon this earlier already, but just to have this written out. The first usage of short form is informal speech. I just want to do this so that, even though we talked about it, I want to just have it written out on the board. Those kinds of people sound like they must have their heads in the butt most of the time. Yeah. I mean, sometimes people are just allergic to contractions, you know? They must say the full word. They cannot just combine two short words together. It is impossible for them, you know? So, let's talk about when to be formal versus informal. Like we touched upon earlier, between close friends and family. Alright, I forget to write for a second. Family. And in the same way, like, you know, you think about, like, how there are people that you would refer to as, like, Mr. and Miss. You wouldn't use short form with, like, you wouldn't use that casual, really speaking, with, like, a teacher or, like, a family friend that, like, you refer to as Mr. or Mrs. You would try to avoid that. Can't wait for the Keigo lesson. Even Shakespeare used contractions, yeah. So, between friends, close friends and family, we would use that short form. People that you'd refer to as Mr. / Ms. We would be using that long form. Thinking about like if you're like working in the service industry and you are trying to, and you're serving someone, right? Like a waiter, you're a cashier, people that you serve. You'd also use that long form. I don't even know where in Genki the lesson on Keigo would be, but it sounds like it'll be a nightmare to talk about.
Keigo is a nightmare.
Is it? Is it in that book?
I don't think it's in Genki 1. I think it's probably somewhere in Genki 2 and Genki 3.
Oh,
it's
God.
Spread out a lot of Keigo is actually learning new words as
learning
well
new
as
words.
Like in Keigo, Iku is Mayoru.
It's like the end of Genki 2? Oh, Jesus. That's quite a long ways away from me. I do hope to be streaming by the time I get to the end of that book, though. We are, like... I actually looked at the page numbers. I'm definitely more than halfway through Genki, even though I've skipped a lot of, like, the practices. In terms of, like, lesson material, I'm a lot farther than I thought I would be.
It's... bringing up Keigo is interesting because, as I was talking about before, with sort of the formality of Japanese society and all of these sort of rules about when you should use different forms. There was one time when I was in Japan, I went to open a new bank account, and my Keigo isn't that strong. And obviously, in a bank, they're all talking to me in Keigo.
Of course.
So I requested the woman who was talking to me, please talk to me in Desmas or plain form. And she really struggled to keep changing everything in Desmas.
God. Please do not use your customer service accent with me. Please just talk to me like a normal person. Like, that's what you're asking them to do. Like, to just drop the formalities.
Yes.
But, like, thinking about something like that, like, in Japan, like, someone who learns Japanese, like, and who is integrated into society because, like, that's where you live, it's like, I'd imagine that it's hard to break out of that when you're in a situation like that. But when you're talking to someone who is not familiar with that because, you know, people who learn it as a second language aren't going to be as strong, it's interesting to see that a situation like that causes them to struggle. And let me just mention, like I said earlier, seniority is important. So, the politeness, yeah, I know. I've barely scratched the surface of it, and I've already, like, seen how hard it could get. Like, the things that you have to think about, like, the things you have to step around and make sure that you don't, like, be accidentally rude to people. Seniors may use short form with the juniors, but the reverse is not expected. The juniors should not be using short form with their seniors. Like we said earlier, they have their own politeness, their own way of speaking. Like, they have to use that long form to talk to their superiors, you know? That seniority is very important in Japan. So you have to make sure that if someone has a higher position than you, that you have to talk to them in the right way. Alright. So following this, there were some other examples that this book provided in terms of informal speech. So one thing that I thought was interesting, because this book, like, drills into you a lot, to don't fall for the anata mix-up. Oh, I know that one. I know to like pretty much. It's so funny. Like you'll go on like Twitter or like other places where like people will like act as if they know so much Japanese, but you know they're just throwing that stuff into Google Translate with like copious amounts of like anata or kimi, or like they don't know enough Japanese, but they like know certain words, so they like try to form sentences using those words that like commonly, since Japanese is like context based, it's not necessary to use anata, or like it's not even necessary to use like boku or watashi, because you know like you're talking about yourself or you're talking to someone else, like the direction of the words is already like given by the context. But I think that's always funny.
I mean, Japanese is incredibly contextual. Like even when I was learning Japanese, way back when I was learning translation, one of the hardest projects I got was translating a passage from a book, and there was just no sort of pronouns in the entire passage, and it was about 4 paragraphs long, and it was definitely the hardest thing I'd gotten to that point.
It's like a minefield.
Trying to figure out who was talking about who and what.
I already like have a hard time. Darling is a closer translation of anata than you. Yeah, I can see that. Anata so totemo nihongo ja. Don't hit me with that. I haven't even gotten to talk about using Jozu and Heta yet, and that's going to be quite a bit from now. So other examples of informal speech that I thought was interesting, because there's things that I drill a lot as I've been teaching this that I thought was interesting that they mentioned here. Other examples of informal speech. So the first one, I thought it was really interesting because, you know, one of the first things they tell you about is that questions drop the ka and instead raise their inflection at the end. Is that true? Do you hear that in Japan?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's common?
You don't have to drop the ka, but it is a little strange when people do use it. But I have heard people say, like, genki ka? Or you can just say, genki?
Yeah. So, I think it's interesting because, like, I guess it's to get you used to, like, reading Japanese, what it is really mainly. But then, like, here it's just saying that despite how, like, every time they write questions, they always end it with ka. Here they're mentioning that, you know, you just drop it. The example they gave me here is the following sentence. Donna. I think my stroke order was horribly messed up there. Ongaku. What am I doing? I'm, as they say, beefing it. That was really bad. I know how to write in Japanese, I swear. Ongaku o iku. So it would essentially be like this. Instead of saying donna ongaku o kiku ka, it would just be donna ongaku o kiku? What music do you listen to? So you just raise the inflection at the end, and it serves the same purpose. You don't have to use the ka. And as Beemo said, it's not expected to, as long as you just raise your inflection, which I think is interesting. But I guess it's just the difference between writing it and actually speaking it. What music do you listen to? And then, this was actually asked by the Gaming Elixir earlier, but sometimes sentences does that end with da can drop character. We can drop the da. Or be followed with ne. That's not ne. Those pesky little close, similar looking characters with ne or yo. So the example here, you could say something like, this is actually just straight from the book. Meari san wa ni nen second year student ni nen sei. So that would be a appropriate way to say it. Meari-san wa ni nen sei. Mary is a sophomore or a second year student. Or if we wanted to be a little spicy, Mary-san wa ni nen sei da yo. Which is closer to saying, like, Mary is a second year student, Mary is a sophomore, you know? Am I right there? That's usually what, like, adding the yo at the end is, right?
Yeah. I mean, I hear yo a lot more in response to someone. It's sort of like telling someone something sort of more emphatically.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. It's like, is it like in response to a question? Or like
sometimes, or if someone, a lot of times I hear it in context of someone made a mistake. So someone, メリーさんは、1年生だ。2年生だよ。Kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense. So like, usually as like a response to like correct someone.
Yes, sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes, okay. But it's like that kind of thing is usually what I see it translated as in the book. So that's just some examples of informal speech situations where short form is used, like the context of it. And then what we're going to do, we have a couple of situations that I wanted to just cover, just like situations where you would mix that long form and the short form. So the first one, like I mentioned after going through the conjugations, is with quotes, you know? Quoting. Or when you're rambling your own thoughts. GHTS, thoughts. Dayo could be like, actually? I think so, right?
Kinda, yeah.
Kinda? Yeah. So if you finish a sentence, if we use, there's a sentence ender that they give us here. If you end a sentence with, they give us these two phrases here that represent two separate things, but both of them will be preceded by similar ideas. So the first one, we end a sentence with to omoimasu. To omoimasu is what this says. To omoimasu. This represents, I think that ... And then there's also to ite. Wait, why did I draw it so narrow? That's a little too narrow. We can write this wider because that's just a singular character there. So to ite imashita. So the first one is when you're thinking about, or when you're talking about something that you think, well, to ite imashita is something more along the lines of they said. And if you remember from our previous verbal conjugations, to omoimasu, that's present tense. But ite imashita is past tense. That lines up. Omoi, for those of you, this isn't a kanji we've ever talked about actually. So omoi actually is the word for think. That's how that lines up with the translation here. And itte is to speak. So omoi is thinking, itte is saying.
I would say for the second one, itte imashita is because you're using imashita. It's more like they were saying.
Yeah, oh, they were saying as opposed to they said?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know the difference there. They were saying. I'll note that. Thank you. I was going by what the book said, but I trust that you have a better grasp on like how that works more contextually in comparison. So, these always come after a predicate in short form. Running out of board space. So it always comes after a predicate in short form. What that means. I'm gonna give 2 examples of a sentence here. The first one, I could say ashita, which is tomorrow, ashita desu to ga arimasu. So as you know, that ga arimasu means the existence of something. The sentence means there is a test tomorrow. So, it's not something anyone said, it's just you recounting that there's a test tomorrow. Maybe like you were talking about it with your friends and then someone was thinking about what work you had to do and you gotta study, so you just say, yeah, I got a test tomorrow. Ashita testo ga arimasu. But then we can compare this to maybe you're thinking about how your teacher said it. So I could say Beemo Sensei Beemo Sensei wa Oh, thank you for the host, Yusha. I appreciate it. Beemo Sensei wa ashita testo ga and then aru, because aru, this is a short form. Instead of arimasu, we get ga aru to itte imashita. And what this longer sentence means is like 2 sentences combined. Imashita. So, Professor Beemo said something. She said that there's going to be a test tomorrow. Professor Beemo. Or as Beemo corrected, was saying there will be a test tomorrow. So that's the difference there. I could simply just say that there's going to be a test tomorrow. Ashita testo ga arimasu. But if I wanted to say who told me that there was going to be a test, we can precede that whole thing. Beemo sensei wa ashita testo ga aru to itte imashita. So it's connecting that thought. It's connecting the idea of knowing that there's a test tomorrow with who told you that there was going to be a test tomorrow. And you can see one big thing to note is that ga arimasu getting turned into just ga aru, turning into that short form, because that arimasu, the E sound turns back into that U sound. I should give Chad a test someday. I might, maybe, maybe do like a test stream. I actually was thinking for next week to take a break from the lessons and just doing a Zatsudan because I need to do some more practice with Japanese, actually. And as a little tangent, every now and then, I look at Wanikani. Actually, I pull it up right now. I open up Wanikani. 208 reviews. So I was thinking that the next time I do, instead of doing a planned lesson, just a chill talking stream where I catch up on the 208 lessons and just talk about, like, more vocab instead of just the grammar, because it's definitely one of those things, like, something to think about, like, as a teacher, have I used Anki at all? I haven't used Anki at all. I've mostly focused on Wanikani. I know that, like, you can make custom decks with Anki, but you mean only 208? Yeah. But, I don't know, it was something I thought about last night. I was thinking about, like, how once my reviews get to a certain number, I, like, just look at it and get intimidated and just put it off. And I've been thinking, like, as we get closer to the end of the typical high school year, how, like, there's a lot of students that I have that just will do the work for the first week of the marking period and then completely, like, forget that they have work to do. And I'm like, yeah, you have the entire until the end of the marking period. I'll give you full credit if you do the work. Just please, God, do the work. And, like, I think about it, like, I was thinking about, like, how I just had all these lessons piled up. And I was like, man, that's probably how the kids feel when, like, they see that they have, like, 9 to 12, like, assignments missing. And it's sort of like, it resonated with me for a bit. But Jesus, 4,600 lessons in one day. That is impressive, actually. I think the biggest grind that I did on Wanikani was 350-something lessons. Cards, yeah. Reviews, basically. Reviews. And I have... God, how do you have the time to do 4,600? I guess you're really fast with them.
I think the most I've ever done, about 400. Not with Anki, I have kanji flashcards.
Okay.
I was gonna go back to ite imashita as a concept because I had to double check this.
Okay.
Basically, use ite imashita if you're talking about something that's happened that someone said to you in the past and you agree with it, I guess.
Okay.
Whereas to ita, or someone said something, is much more common in, like, novels, or he said that kind of thing, or in newspapers.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
So it's like, so this is ite mashita is like if it's something that you agree with or something like that.
I mean, not necessarily, but it's basically something that you heard and you are telling someone directly.
Like you're quoting them.
Yes, but to ita, just ita.
To ita would be more like,
or to imashita is more the kind of language you see when reported in a newspaper or reported in a book.
I see. And yeah, Yusha, I'll take you up on that. You're using Anki for vocab, yeah, because I'm sure, like, Wanikani is, like, kind of weird with, like, the vocabulary it gives you. So if you have, like, a vocab deck and Anki deck that is probably better geared for just real things, then yeah, I'd be more than happy to check that out, more than happy to practice with that. I could probably juggle 2 different kanji learning apps at once. But the other thing I wanted to mention, so we talked about to ite mashita, or as you said, to ita, you said?
Yes. Could you excuse me a sec?
Yeah. What's up?
Oh, I just need to go to the washroom.
Okay, no problem. I'll continue as you do that. So,
okay.
We mentioned to ite mashita, as they were saying, but we also have the I think that. This is for when you talk about things that, like, you're gossiping, right? And you want to talk about something that, like, you think might be happening. So, you're watching someone do something. You're you're just sitting off in the corner, you know, you're at, I don't know, like your video game club, you know, you have a bunch of kids like chilling out playing games, you see someone like losing a lot, you could say something like, I only say this because this was the example I wrote because I didn't want to copy every single example I did down verbatim from Genki. I wanted to come up with my own. So we could say, Yamada-san wa kono game ga kirai. So here we have kirai for dislike. Kirai dato. Kirai dato. Omoi. Omoi. Mas. So, Yamada-san wa kono gemu ga kirai dato omoimasu. Or, I think Yamada dislikes that game. No, you ever just go into like a video game club and you see someone get like double perfected like 3 times in a row, and they kind of just throw their controller on the ground and walk away? That's when you just go like, Yamada-san wa kono gemu ga kirai dato omoimasu. You know, I don't think he likes that game. That's the other thing. You can use it for quoting someone, like it says up here, toite mashita, as like quoting someone, or things that you think about, things that like you're mulling over. To omoimasu. So,
Tadaima.
Welcome back. Okaedi. I have to remember that I should actually also try speaking Japanese. And they come back to run like another first to 50 and go 50. Ooh. I once ran an informal first to 50 in Skullgirls with a friend. It wasn't like anything we planned. We were just playing for like an hour, playing like 50 matches because, you know, games go really fast when one player is bad and the other player is good. We ran the first to 50 and the final set count was 1 to 50. I was the one. But man, that was my first like big experience playing a game with rollback. Or not my first, but like that was my first time playing that game online with someone. I didn't even care that I was losing 50 games because like when you're interested in learning fighting games and like playing them, when you get just like the little victories off, I feel like that's what you get out of it. Like there are a lot of games that I was like really close to winning, but sometimes it's just about like getting there, not necessarily getting the win, because otherwise I feel like you couldn't be happy with fighting games. So the next one, like I mentioned earlier as well, the next usage of short form, requesting someone does refrains. I'll write this out. I think this will sound more normal. Someone refrains from doing something. Like, exactly. Like, getting that training mode combo you've been, like, practicing, or, like, getting a setup that you really wanted to land, getting, like, a mix-up, getting the proper Oki down, or, like, even just, like, catching someone in, like, a knockdown loop for, like, 1 or 2 knockdowns. It's like those little victories that you like feel really sick about. Or when you catch someone with a raw overhead or like a raw super. Like, I'm not winning, but hitting that raw feels really good. So, previously, we learned... Why did I write we and learn right together? And I forgot how to write in English. All I'm writing is numbers, so like... Having to write out word is always like, I do more word writing here than I actually write in the academy.
Wouldn't English be more efficient if we just got rid of spaces like the Japanese did?
Oh, that would be awful. Previously we learned. That's usually like the joke that they make. Like, yeah, if Japanese didn't have kanji, it would look like if English had no spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Previously we learned to make requests using a form. For example, we had like mate kudasai. Please wait. When your writing system is so bad it needs 3 alphabets. Well, let's say it requires 2 alphabets and then a picture book. Or like 80 picture books. Because, I mean, you could write all kanji out as katakana. It's just that katakana is the Oh! Oh! Disembodied Voices, thank you for the raid. Welcome, everyone. I hope that you're raring to learn some more Japanese. We're currently in the middle of a lesson. We're currently talking about... Oh, we're hearing voices. We're currently talking about short-form Japanese, we talked about how to use informal language, how to use it informally, and now we're talking about some more proper uses. I suppose if I'm having a raid, I should at least do a little brief review of what we've talked about. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Elliot Ambers, and I am a scholar. I play a lot of strategy games, and also every Thursday, I do Japanese lessons like this. And I'm joined today by the wonderful Satsuma Beemo, and she is helping point me on the right path as I teach this, you know? It feels like I'm doing like an observation, like I'm being observed by like a supervisor. So, we talked about short form. Many of you probably know that... Reverse JET, yeah! Many of you probably know that Japanese has a very formal way of speaking, like... if you know, like... How do I explain this?
That there is a hierarchy of language.
Yeah.
In terms of formality in Japanese, that you have essentially 3 main forms.
Mm-hmm.
The one that most people learn when they start is desmas form. Then you have short form, which is sometimes referred to as plain form.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have keigo at the top.
Yeah, and that's like the super formal.
Yes, and short form, as we've been learning today, is used in casual language. It's also used when connecting verbs together, or, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's rules with it, but typically it's used for informal speech. And we think about like when to be formal versus informal, like that hierarchy. Between close friends and family, you could use that short form. But like with people that like you'd serve, like if you're like a waiter or a cashier, or like people that you refer to as like Mr. and Mrs., you use that like that long form, that desmas form you said?
Yes.
Yes. And seniority is also important. Like, if you're talking to someone who's like a year above you, you're going to use that formal form, that desmas form, and someone above you might use the short form back at you, or, as Beemo had said, that they have their own special form of speaking back to subordinates or like people under them, their juniors. So we talked about that. We talked about this whole thing on conjugation that I don't really want to go back and review that, but just know that it exists. It's used for quoting people, requesting people don't do things, and expressing ideas like, I like to do this, or I'm good at doing X. And we talked about other examples of informal speech, and how we apply it to quoting in long form. But now we're getting to how to ask someone to not do something, you know? We know that if I say something like matte kudasai, I'm asking someone to please wait, and it uses what we call te form, or command form, as it's been called in the book as well. But if I want to request that someone doesn't do something, to request that someone doesn't do something. Your brain is expanding. I'm glad you're learning. I'm glad you feel the brain cells rubbing together. My 2 brain cells are working overtime. They're on fire right now. Request that someone doesn't do something. We use the short negative followed by nai. That's not nai, that's ta. Haha, nai de kudasai. I saved that. You know, I can do it in English, I can do it. If I can do it with English characters, I can do it with katakana or hiragana. So for example, I could say the following. I could say Dono hon, that book, Dono hon o And if you ever look back at any of my other lessons that I have uploaded on my YouTube archives, you'll see that I use a lot of the same verbs a lot because, you know, I don't want to throw too many new verbs when I only do a lesson once a week. So you'll see a lot of reading, you'll see a lot of students, you'll see a lot of eating. You focus on just understanding the grammar, not a vocab. So, dono hon o yomanai. Kudasai. So you'd say, Sono hon o yomanai kudasai.
Nai de. Yomanai de kudasai.
Yomanai. Oh! Catch me with my pants down, as they say. Yomanai de kudasai. I forgot the day. Thank you. Rookie mistake. Please don't read that book. No! Reina, why? Oh, glad to see you here too.
Himitsu no chishiki ni haiteru hon da.
Oh my god. So, as a reminder, we're using that short form negative. So, like I mentioned before, the long form of a negative verb, yomimasen, when we do that short form, it's yomanai. The mi turns into an that e sound turns into an a sound. Yomi turns to yoma. Yomanai. So we can see that when we connect it, Sono hon o yomanai de kudasai. So it feels like, even in this case, we have that yomanai, and it feels like they have that te kudasai, like we had in that command form, but we still have to use this short form negative in order to get that whole thing across. Sono hon o yomanai de kudasai. Please don't read that book. No! You're trying to ruin my credibility here. Okay. And so the last thing that we're going to talk about here, we talked about requesting that someone doesn't do something. The last thing that we're going to talk about... Oh, and thank you for the follow, the enemy of my enemy. I assume that makes you my friend. But not necessarily. It could be that we both want to see someone fall, but not necessarily be comrades in arms. No! So the last thing that we're going to talk about, enjoying things. This is the last kind of set of phrases that we're going to talk about that relates to that short form. So, we can use the short form of verbs and adjectives, and use the short form of verbs / adjectives when using them as nouns. Them as nouns by adding no at the end of them. So we'll see the following example here. So let's say, sentence is kind of long, but I think I can fit it here. Nihongo. Many of you guys know this is Japanese. Nihongo. Nihongo o. I forgot that last set of strokes there. Nihongo o benkyou. We always talk about studying Japanese because I feel like that's a verb that most goes with this. That word. Nihongo o benkyou. And instead of the usual conjugation that we have, instead of shimasu, Nihongo o benkyou suru no. So you can see that suru no ga suki desu. Suki desu. Or I like studying Japanese. As if Nihongo is Japanese, is Pokemon Go the language of Pokemon? You might be onto something, Spuds. I like studying Japanese. So essentially, saying that you like doing something. Nihongo o benkyou suru no ga suki desu. Saying that you enjoy studying Japanese. Is that correct? I feel like
yes,
I'm having.
that's right.
That sounds right. I feel like I'm having a little. What's up?
I was gonna say, you can have no, and you can also have koto, and at least when I was taught Japanese, I was taught koto before no, so you can also say Nihongo o benkyou suru koto ga suki desu.
Oh.
Both are completely fine.
Yeah, I've seen koto a lot when I'm like reading like things in Japanese. I see that like attached a lot to like suru and other like actions like that. So that's interesting to know that it serves that same function.
Yes.
Because isn't koto?
It means a thing. Basically, they both serve the same function because what you're doing is you're turning the verb into a noun in order to modify it with the adjective.
I see. So you're changing the part of speech by adding that koto or that no.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Just making sure I understand that. Thank you. And that's interesting to know because I do see that a lot. Nata no koto. No.
ダメ。これは安全のストリームだ。この報告はその考えはダメ。
Oh my god. Similarly, we could use ski or kirai to say that you like or dislike something. Similarly, we can use... Could you please say again when you use koto? So, what it is that by adding this no as a suffix, it sort of turns this verb into a noun. And doing koto serves that same purpose. They're similar in function, if not the same in function. So I could say Nihongo o benkyou suru no ga suki desu. I like studying Japanese. But if I also said Nihongo o benkyou suru koto ga suki desu, it would be the same thing. You're turning that verb into a noun by affixing the koto.
I mean, it's interesting because benkyou is a noun by itself.
Yeah, but benkyou suru is, I guess, the verb form.
So essentially, you're turning it into a verb and then back into a noun in order to turn it into a gerund, if you know what a gerund is.
I don't know what a gerund is.
A gerund is a verb that acts as a noun in English. So studying, I like studying, I like. So.
Okay.
So, because otherwise, Nihongo o benkyou ga suki desu also means more, I like Japanese study. As opposed to, I like studying.
Yeah. Because studying is like the verb being turned into a noun as opposed to just, the noun to verb to noun pipeline. A necessary evil. Local math teacher can please be nice to me. Just because my field is mathematics doesn't mean that I can't try to at least grapple with language. It's actually embarrassing when I see other math teachers. It's sad to say that the majority of math teachers that I work with are significantly worse at grappling the English language than I am. This is both at the college level, when I was getting my degree, and also in the current level, where I get asked a lot of English questions a lot for some reason. I don't know. Do I seem smart? I don't think so. Why do they ask me these things? They're not very good at ordinary grappling either. So, moving on. Similar to how you can use ski or kirai to represent that you like or dislike doing a verb turned to noun, we can also use two very commonly known words. You all know it, you all love it, you all know the meme. Everyone say it with me, Nihongo Jozu. We can use Jozu or the upside down good, which is, you'd think they'd read similarly because, you know, they have that same second character. No, this is Jozu and Heta. Yes, correct. Jozu and Heta. To represent being good or bad at. So not only can we turn these verbs into upside down good, exactly! So I could say something like the following. You know, I talked about how I lost a first to 50 by 49 matches. So we could say Game o Oh, I drew that little bracket there really small, but you know, you could just do that.
And you put Kame.
I what?
You missed out the 10 on Ke.
On Ke? Where?
So you look
right
at the
Kemu instead of Gemu. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gemu o asobu. Asobu no ga eta this. Or as a sentence would say, I'm bad at playing games. Gemu o asobu no ga heta desu. I love video games. I always want to make heta mean hate. What's up?
Game o asobu no ga heta desu is a little bit of a mouthful in Japanese a lot of the time when you're saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst grammatically it's fine.
Yeah. I dropped my book, but that was the end of the lesson, so that's fine.
But Japanese people will just say game ga heta desu instead of putting all of the extra
Yeah, so instead of adding the instead of just saying playing games, you say I'm just bad at games, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I just did this one because I thought it would be a funny one. And it makes sense grammatically, but it does make sense that you wouldn't want to say something like this normally because it is a mouthful. Games bad at. Gemu ga heta desu. I'm bad at video games. We all know that by now. Just looking back forlornly at my Fire Emblem Iron Man. Alright. So, that is the end of the grammar lesson. Like I said at the start of the lesson, we are now going to do some conversational practice here, so you'll get to see me try to struggle with Japanese while Beemo gives me some prompts. So let's do this. You know, in this case here, we're going to hide this here. And it's like I'm doing a presentation, so what better way to be put on the spot? I say that very loosely. I'm not being put on the spot, but let's enlarge and... Wait, why am I doing this? You know, I'll be in the front of the class right now, you know? You know, whenever you do like oral exercises, I don't know how your guys' language classes were, but actually the language I took in high school was actually German. And when we had to do these oral tests, they actually didn't like put us on the spot this badly where we would be standing in front of the classroom. We actually were put like behind the divider to like save us from the shame of everyone else having to hear our broken German. But this is my stream. I'm putting myself in the middle here, while Beemo is a teacher. So she is at the teacher's desk. And she will be giving me the prompts. I will be speaking here. And transfer. Let's move her down a little bit so you don't block all the chat box. It's school. If it isn't publicly humiliating, what's the point? That may have been true years ago, but even I'm not mean enough to try to publicly humiliate my own students. So, what conversation topics do you have for us now, Beemo?
So, first, 最初は、普通の自己紹介みたいな会話をにしよう。
ゆっくり話してください。
最初は自己紹介をしよ
う。自己紹介をしよ
う。わかりますか？
わかりますか？わかります。
はい、じゃあ、こんにちは。
こんにちは。
お名前は何ですか？
名前はエリオット・アンバーズです。
私は薩摩ビーモと申します。よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。
今日は最初、お趣味を何ですか？
お趣味を
趣味は何ですか？
わかりません。
趣味。
は
趣味 hobbies。
趣味は勉強するとゲームを遊ぶとwords. I can't think of what I want to say. 楽器を遊ぶ。楽器は instrument, right?
Yes.
Nice.
でも楽器を遊ばない。遊ぶはゲーム。楽器は弾く。
弾く。楽器を弾く。トロンボーンは弾く。
Okay. That brings up an interesting point. Hiku is stringed instruments. I know that.
Yes.
I'm drawing a blank if hiku can also be used for wind instruments.
Yeah, because hiku is pull, right?
Yes.
So hiku is pull. So I guess for wind instruments, wouldn't it be something related to blowing?
Maybe. You could just say 演奏する. 演奏する means to perform.
演奏する? 演奏する. トロンボーンを演奏する.
Okay.
次。
そして勉強、趣味は勉強と言っていました。何の勉強をしますか？何の勉強をするか？数学は勉強と日本語を勉強。
Yeah. 僕は日本語 と数学は勉強します。
勉強しています。
勉強しています。勉強している。Yeah. はい。
はい。うん。はい、わかりました。次は、ゲーム。何のゲーム好き？
ゲームの好き。チームファイトタクティクスは好きです。ファイアーエンブレム好きです。でも、好きです。what else do I like?
前に聞いたけど、エリエットさんは格闘ゲームは本当に好き。
格闘ゲーム？
格闘ゲーム。例えば、スカルガールズ、ギルティギア、そこあれ
ば。毎日、ないけど、悪い悪い。I'm drawing a blank here.
What do you want to say?
I don't know what I want to say. I think I lost track of the conversation. Oh.
格闘ゲームの中で一番好き。
一番好きウルトラストリートファイター4は一番。でも、ギルティギア XX アクセントはめちゃめちゃ好きです。
私も好きです。次は。何の食べ物が好きですか？
食べ物好きが牛丼は好きだ。カレーが好き。焼肉がとっても好き。
お好み焼きは一番好きな食べ物。
お好み焼き
食べたことがありましたか？
ない。
めっちゃ美味しい。今週の予定は何ですか？
わかりません。
明日何をしますか？
明日は学校仕事にいます。
どちらも大丈夫。
明日は配信私とお嫁様は配信
配信何の配信？ゲームですかとか、また勉強するか？
ゲーム。Haunted PS1 デモディスク。
怖いみたい。
とっても怖い。
遊ぶなら幽霊を出てかな。
If
you play it, maybe a ghost will come.
の、ない、ないください。怖い。
うん。と、日本に行ったことがありましたか？
行ったことがありましたか？Can you please repeat?
と、日本に行ったことがありましたか？
行ったことがありました。I'm blanking on what this means.
Have you been to Japan?
でも、来年は日本にいます。来年？来年 is next year, right?
That's right.
Yeah. 来年家族は日本に行きます。
はい。日本で、どこに、行きたいですか？
私の家族は、私の家族で家は名古屋です。
家族は、日本に住んでいますか？
はい。
わかりました。
母の妹は名古屋に lives there.
Okay. まあ、名古屋は、大阪と奈良の近いだから、その場所に、訪ねたいですか？行きたいですか？
大阪 I got lost halfway through the sentence.
名古屋は大阪と奈良の近いです。
Oh, it's near Osaka and Nara?
だから、あの場所と大阪と奈良に行きたいですか？
行きたいは... Oh, to go.
Yes.
Yes, はい。でも、家族に... If I say they live, is that de or ni? If I'm describing that their house is there?
Be there?
家族で家は名古屋、でも
違う。家族の家は名古屋で名古屋にあります。
あります。家族の家、
はい。
家族の家で名古屋はいます。名古屋にから
に You can say に or で
にから
just にあります。
にあります。
So my family's home is in 名古屋。
Okay. でも、東京へ行きます。東京と富士山行きます。
わかりました。富士山は本当に美しい
うんうん。
だと思いますか？
Say that again? I think I missed it.
富士山は本当に美しいだと思いますか？
I've heard. き、書きます。私を書きます。That would be I've heard, right? How would you say that?
I've heard. 聞いていました。
聞いていました。聞いていました。
まあ、I think in Japanese, a lot of people would say, "Oh, そうみたいです."
Oh,
It seems that そうみたい。
そうみたい。And thank you, PPO, for the follow.
Let's see.
何
について話しましょうか。東京で、何のことをしたいですか？
ことをしたい？
例えば、例えば、買い物をしたり、スカイツリーを見たり、
渋谷に行きます。
はい。
渋谷、スクランブルクロッシングへ行きます。スカイツリーに行きます。Is that correct? Is he saying to go there? に行きます If I plan on going there?
You can say 行く予定です。I plan to go to.
行く予定です。スカイツリーに行く予定です。秋葉に行くとです。つもり
You mean Tsumari?
つもり It was said in the chat. つもり
Okay.
彼つもり
Fude.
Oh, Fude. Why did I read that so wrong? Fude. 僕の脳がとっても小さい。次。
Okay. 次。なぜ日本と日本語を興味を持っていますか？
なぜ日本と I got the first part of that asking about why about Japanese?
So なぜ日本語を興味を持っていますか？
持っていますか？持って何が持って
興味 means interest. So
Oh!
in Japanese they say to hold an interest in something. Why are you interested?
Why am I interested in Japanese in Japan? Okay. Hey. アニメとゲームが好きです。でも、日本はとってもI know that 面白い means interesting, but I don't think that would be the right word to use here to say 面白い because that also means funny.
You can use 面白い in this context.
Okay. 日本はとっても面白い。で、それはとってもかっこいい。 僕の家族が、you wouldn't say iki for living, like to say that they reside there, right?
No.
No.
Use the word sumu.
Sumu?
Yeah.
家族が日本を住む?
But because they are currently living there, you don't say sumu, you say?
Oh. 住みます.
Not quite.
See?
How do you change a verb to mean something that is currently happening for a time?
Currently happening for a time. It wouldn't be past, it wouldn't be sumimashita, would it?
No.
No.
Present progressive?
I haven't learned that yet.
Sundeimasu.
Deimasu?
We were Sundeimasu.
Sundeimasu.
we used imas today, deimasu.
We did. Oh, we did. Oh no! This is what I'm saying. My conversational abilities are like my reading ability, my writing ability, I would say, is like if we're starting from the bottom, like this is ground level here. My writing ability is like probably here, right? And my speaking ability is like right down here.
I know. I mean, I know what it's like.
Of course, I'd imagine.
I think of all of my Japanese ability, my conversation ability is the weakest. I do. As part of my work, I read a lot and I had to do translation, even though I was teaching English, because of my Japanese ability. The teachers would come. They'd be like, Beemo sensei, これを翻訳してくださいとか, please translate. But I had a lot of trouble at first, sort of processing like Japanese into English or vice versa. I find it easier to listen to Japanese and process it, but get it. And I think the hardest skill in any language, 一番難しいは、その言語で自然の言葉を使うことがにくい、使いにくいだと思います。Even now, I do feel like I make a lot of mistakes. I try and correct myself. One thing that I always told my students when I was teaching them English is that you shouldn't worry too much about mistakes. The purpose of language is always to communicate.
Of course.
So just communicating, just saying, trying to say, do the best you can, as long as you can get your point across. And even if that means like, you don't know something, you don't know a particular word, but you can say the same word but using a roundabout way. Then that's a good skill to learn as well.
Just for the sake of getting your point across.
Yes.
I totally get that. And yeah, forming your sentences, I think that's the thing. Like I could learn like the grammar and the stuff, but then having to form my own sentences, like I think for any language, even when I was like learning German, that was like definitely like the hardest part. I could understand like all the cases and like if I had to use der die das or dem die das or whatever the case was, if I was using like a genitive or accusative. But like when it came to actually forming the sentences, going outside of vocabulary and grammar, creating on your own is just like that's like the highest point of the language. It's like the synthesis and actually like putting everything to use. So I think that really is like the biggest challenge, and I think it's good that we got to do this because I managed to get some sentences in, but we're still learning.
I think 次はロールプレイをしようか。
はい、はい、はい。ロールプレイ。
はい。最初は道案内。
道案内？
道案内。So this is another skill I think you should try. So try and break down the word. Try and break down 道案内. Because I think you should know both parts of this word.
Nichi?
Michi.
Yeah. Michi yes. Annai. Michi, is that town?
That's Machi, but it's close. You're getting close.
Michi. Oh, wait. And day is Nichi. That's not Michi.
If I write the kanji, I'll write it in chat.
Okay. Maybe I'll recognize a kanji. I feel like I know what this kanji is, but I've been slacking on my Wanikani rep so much that it might have slipped out of my mind. Nai is inside, I know that. Michi an Nai? Michi, what? It's so familiar to me, and I can't believe I'm blanking.
と、チャットの人々は先生を手伝えますか? Can anyone in chat tell Sensei what that means?
Let's see where they're itakunai. Show the way. Directions.
That's right, directions.
Alright. That is going to be the roleplay that we do first. Right.
So, I want you, and because I want you to try asking me where something is, I will give you some simple directions, and then I want you to tell me what directions I gave you.
Okay.
I probably should get a pen so I don't forget what directions I gave you.
Kantan.
I'm sitting at a computer, I can type.
Hi. Junbi. すみません。トイレはどこですか？
トイレはそこです。
銀行はどこですか？
銀行か。銀行はここから、最初は、まっすぐ、10分ぐらい、歩いて、そして、10分の後で、信号に、道に曲がって、そして、銀行は、左側です。
Okay. So, my brain went in and out for that. I put together. You said Jubun, which means 10 minutes away. You said Hidarigawa, which means on the left side. But I don't know what direction to go.
Okay.
I
said.
Say it one more time just so I can hear it.
So I said, ここから、まっすぐに、10分ぐらい歩いて、その後で、右に曲がって、そして銀行は左側です。
Okay.
信号に、右に曲がって。
Question.
Yes.
What is masugu?
means go straight.
Okay, that's the word that I did not know. That is the one that had me tripped up. Okay. Yeah, and then you said Migi, so that's right.
I'm fairly certain. I think I may have confused myself a second.
It seems like everyone in the chat has the right idea, so
Yeah.
so I think you were right. I think it's just me and my we'll just say it's streamer brain. It's streamer brain deteriorating. You know, like how streamer brain makes you do significantly worse in games? It's we'll put it
I deliberately chose this topic because even though I've been studying Japanese for even though I have N2 in Japanese, for some reason, directions are my weak point, even though it's so basic Japanese, because I feel like I just skipped over it and I never really...
It's like a blind spot.
Yeah.
But it's something that's just so important to know, like, especially if like you need to find your way around. You need to be able to ask for directions and also understand the directions.
Especially if you're a foreigner in Japan and getting one thing about Japan is how annoyingly difficult it is to get a data sim, so you do sometimes have to rely on directions.
Yeah. What, is your phone dead? You haven't gotten the SIM card in Japan yet, is what happened, Spuds. You can't activate the GPS if you don't know where to go to a store to buy them. Though I guess if you go look for any big signs for I don't know, something that looks like it sells electronics, it should be fine. Just ask the kind Omawari-san if you get lost. Alright. Tsugi wa?
Okay. So can you try one more?
Hi. See. Kissaten wa doko desu ka?
喫茶店かな？ここからまっすぐに行って、駅まで。駅の前に、左に曲がって、で、喫茶店はマクドナルドの反対側。
That's it?
Yes.
So you said masugu, so that means straight ahead?
Yes.
And you said eki, which is station, right?
Yes.
So it's by the station. And then you mentioned McDonald's, so I didn't know the word that you used in comparison with McDonald's, so I don't know where it is in relation to McDonald's. Opposite. Hang a left in front of the... Oh, I missed the left. I missed the hidari.
That's right.
I got like a good 60% of the words this time around.
Okay, and lastly, so I will be... well, let's do this. Let's take this in turn. So first, I will be a server at a, let's say a famiresu.
Okay.
So you can order basically anything at a famiresu. Don't expect good quality, but you can order a lot of
anything.
Stuff. So I would like you to try and order some food from me.
Okay, so, let me see. I can't layer this the way I'd want to. I wanted to put a menu in front of me, but that's okay. So. One sec. Let me just do this real quick. And then... Okay, we're good. So...
はい。お客様、何にいかがでしょうか？
今日のおすすめは何ですか？
おすすめ今日のおすすめは、何がいいかな何がいいかな今日のおすすめは、もんじゃ焼き。
もんじゃ焼き？あ、
うん
もんじゃ焼き、もんじゃ焼きください。もんじゃ焼きと、アサヒください。
以上ですか？
以上？
以上ですか？
ない。
はい。以上 means, is that all?
Yeah, that's what I. Oh, wait. I thought it meant anything else. I thought it... はい、
Is that
はい、
all
は
that
い、
you
は
said?
い、はい。
はい、わかりました。そして、もんじゃ焼きを一つと、朝日を一つ。かしこまりました。お待ちな、はい。お待ちなさい。
お待ちなさい。
Please wait here.
Oh, duh, 待ち。
はい。Okay, this time I will order, and I want you to try and tell me what I ordered.
Okay. What would you like to order? I don't know how to ask that in Japanese.
何がいかがですか？
何かいかがですか？
いかがでしょうか? They're very formal. It's a phrase I hear a lot, and then we sort of found out. So I was actually like thinking, what do they always say to me? What do they always say to me?
What have I heard in Japan?
はい。最初は、枝豆。
Edamame.
その後、豚肉のお好み焼き。
Budaniku, that's pork, right?
Yes.
Pork okonomiyaki?
はい。その後、Strong Zero 3本です。3本でお願いします。
Sanpon. Strong zero. Sanpon? Oh, 3 strong zeros.
Yes.
Jeez! She's pounded them all! She's going crazy today! Hard day at work? 仕事はとっても難しい？難しいか？
はい。竹たぬきの生活すごく難しい。
Strong. Psycho. That's all I've heard, actually. I've never got to try strong.
最後は
last?
Trying to think of a dessert you might know.
Go ham, go ape shit.
はい。あんみつ。
あんみつ。
あんみつ一つください。
I don't know what that is.
I can... let's see. Am I...
Is it like anmitsu is anmitsu? Is there a translation for it?
It's like a kind of a fruit salad.
Oh, okay. I see.
I'll show you a picture.
Right.
1 second, 1 second. Sending now.
It's like hollow hollow, I see.
Yes.
Oh god, it really is like hollow hollow, but Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, geez. It's uncanny. It's quite uncanny. I see. Anmitsu. How does that... Huh. Is there a literal translation for that?
No. Like
No.
many... So that's the thing. Like with many Japanese foods, it's difficult to like... How would you translate? I believe...
Like what kanji... Does it use like kanji for the word?
I believe it does, but it's one of those words where it has kanji because it is an older word.
Ah, so like the kanji used is like it doesn't really relate necessarily to.
Well, the
literal.
mitsu.
Hmm?
Is that the mitsu? I believe the mitsu is from hachimitsu, which means honey or sweet.
Ah, okay.
But I don't recognize the kanji for an.
Okay. Regardless.
But like,
So you
think
want...
about. I mean, think about some Japanese foods like, okonomiyaki. How would you translate that?
I'll be honest. I actually don't. Oh wait, that's the red bean, right? Okonomiyaki.
No, that.
Wait. I'm mixing it up with something else. Obanyaki is what I mixed it up with. Okonomiyaki. Wait, I've had that before. Yeah, I don't know how it translated into English, I'll be honest.
If you look at the kanji, you can see what the kanji is.
Let me take a look. Let me type that out.
It's if it's in chat.
It's in chat. Okonomiyaki. Isn't that the kanji for like?
Exactly.
Likeable grill. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there's not really a really suitable translation for that.
Exactly. Like, it means literally anything you want or anything you like grilled.
Ah, I see. So,
likable.
Likeable grill.
So I think that's it for conversation practice today.
I think that's good. I think we had a good lesson and some good practice. I thank you for the practice here. It's very like, you know, that like it's something that you always know that like you're not good at speaking or you're not good at a skill, but then you get put on the spot and it really like helps like illuminate like what it is, like the problems. And it helps even if I like fumbled very heavily. I think it was a very important experience, and I thank you. Thank you, Beemo.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I also thank you for the help during the lesson as well.
Yeah, if you ever want to do conversation practice again, you can hit me up anytime.
Of course. And I'd like to thank everyone else for being here and taking the time to learn and also to watch my brain explode in real time. So what I would like to do now, as you know, it's the end of the lesson, so let's go find someone to raid. Let's find someone to send you guys off to. Let's see who's online. Let's see. Oh, it looks like Yaru is playing some Jackie Chan, from what I can tell. So let's all go over to her.
I don't care who you are.
Let's go raid Yaru. So.
Okay, that sounds good.
Arigato, Beemo sensei, Erioto sensei, otsukare. Narashikatta, arigato. Yoku ganbarete. Otsukare. As always, class is dismissed. And I should send the raid. Raid. Yarugado. Playing. That's X-Men versus Street Fighter. Let's give her a visit.